Okay, welcome to our review of Star Wars The Last Jedi. We've just seen the movie. I really don't know where to dive in. Do we want to start with special effects, maybe? It's a little bit more surface topic. I, for one, thought they were fantastic.
Yep.
It's not really a spoiler, but it starts with a space scene. I'm not going to say what happens. But, the last movie, was good for special effects, but I felt like we didn't get the same kind of, intense flight space. There was a little bit, of course, with Poe. But in this one, they start off with a bang. And I think the special effects throughout the movie were fantastic.
Well, you only really see the special effects really shine when you have a nice battle like that. And having a space battle where you have ships fighting and stuff flying everywhere, that really kind of gets the juices going when it comes to watching that. So I think they did a really good job, and the special effects did look really good at that.
I really liked one of the light speed special effects late in the movie that just looked amazing. I'm not going to go too much into it for spoiler reasons, but it just looks so good. I also really like the lightsaber, the battle effects.
Yep.
It looks different from the previous two trilogies and how sort of the lightsaber battles and those effects look. But it looks really good in its own
Technology
way.
has gotten so much better for it, right?
Even beyond the special effects, though, and this is kind of already a little bit diverting, I really liked the fights with lightsabers, not just for the special effects of the lightsaber, because honestly, that's not very impressive from a technological standpoint, but the choreography, the actual fights were very fluid, they were very entertaining, it's not really a special effect, but it was really well done.
They were really gritty, and they were kind of like the very first battle in Episode 7, where they have that really gritty battle with the stormtroopers right at the start. The battles throughout this were very much like that, which is really good. Again, it does feel very different from the first two trilogies, in that it feels more like they're just really well choreographed battles more than they are lightsaber battles.
I like the direction they're going with the lightsaber stuff compared to where we were with the first one, because the first one, Rey didn't really know what she was doing with the lightsaber.
Yeah.
This one felt a little bit better that way. Still not going to compare with something, let's say, like the prequel trilogy. The lightsaber battles in that were just so well choreographed.
Episode 1...
One of the
the
best
only
lightsaber
reason
battles.
people remember it is because of the Darth Maul.
Oh, absolutely.
That battle, I mean, even though I did enjoy the battles here for the choreography, they can't hold a candle to that.
No.
They can't. It's just not... It's asking too much of it.
And I'd have to definitely agree with that. These were really good battles with lightsabers. They weren't really good lightsaber battles, though.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's to each their own. You have to see it.
Yeah.
I can see what you mean by the distinction.
Yeah.
Battles with lightsabers rather than lightsaber battles. Staying kind of on special effects, because I'm not sure if it was CGI or practical effects, but like we anticipated, we saw Snoke, not just in a projection, but actually in person. I did not like his look. I don't know if it was practical or CGI, but...
it was definitely CGI.
I have to agree. I think he looked better than he did in the first one.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, in the first one, he was mostly just a projection, right? So there was still... You could still kind of change it a little bit before you actually see it, right?
Yeah.
And, again, practical or CGI, just a bad decision.
So my only caveat on this, it would be that I do like the use of the CGI with some of his Force abilities. That was okay.
They looked really cool.
But his actual image, you're right, I feel was a little weak.
Mm-hmm.
Just because he just looks like this gangly, ugly-looking guy.
Yeah, they were trying to go with a Palpatine look, and they just did not make it.
See, Palpatine had that, terrifying presence about him, though.
Yeah.
Especially with, the hood over just so you don't see the eyes. It had more of a...
Mystique to it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, in this one... Okay, I was suspending disbelief a little bit from the first one, because it kind of just looked like he was scarred or deformed or whatever. And then when I actually saw it, I was just like, it just kind of feels phoned in.
Yeah.
He looks like a really weird golem.
Fair
really
enough.
big golem.
Really big golem.
Overall, I think that they did a good job with the present.
One other thing I will say of note, kind of regarding maybe not so much CGI but the graphical decisions as a whole. I really like the scenes where they did like some contrast work with like the red and black especially.
Yes.
Like when you first meet Snoke, for example. Yes, he isn't threatening, but the atmosphere around him,
the black
was
and the red
so
in the
well
room.
done.
Yes, we're
It
very.
was very stylized, and it just looked really good for my opinion.
The only other quick thing I'll mention about the graphics as well is I did feel like
Mention whatever you want. I mean,
The-
it's your review too.
the fauna felt a little weak. Like, I mean, just, it's tough because, okay, like, you have the original trilogy where they use practical effects, it looks great. Then you go to the prequel trilogy where they use CGI, and it was pretty weak.
Yeah.
This one is a chance for them to kind of get better with the CGI. I didn't think they really did a good job, though.
So overall,
Overall, it was decent.
I kind of got what they were trying to go with the animals, add some like cute things in, because there have always been some cute things in Star Wars as well.
Well, those are there for a reason.
I thought they looked. I
Some
thought they looked.
merchandise.
I thought they looked
No.
pretty good.
Did you not hear about it?
I thought the penguin things looked really cute.
They were there because there was an actual animal, like the puffins, on the island they were filming, who would not leave them alone when they were filming. So they're like, well, it's easier just to CGI over them than to try and get them out.
I had no idea. I thought it was just like, oh, let's put a cute little critter in there so we can sell plushies and
No,
stuff
they
like
were
that.
everywhere on the island, and they would not leave them alone while
That makes
filming.
it so much better because it also reminds me of the Gizka from like Knights of the Old Republic, the Bioware game.
Yeah.
And
Honestly,
funny
that
to me.
gives it a whole new dynamic.
Yeah.
All right, well, I mean, let's move on from special
Yeah.
effects. Character work. Like, there was some new characters. There's some old characters, but, you know, the mainstays that we expected to be there, Finn, Poe, Rey. I'm going to personally say I was kind of disappointed.
Way too one-dimensional for all of them.
I liked what they
Very
did with Poe.
one-dimensional.
I like what they did with him.
Really? Because I thought he was one of the worst.
I thought the worst was Finn. I thought they did absolutely
Well, I
nothing
kind of
with
put
his
them in the same category because in the first one, I thought they were the two standouts. Like, they were awesome, they were badass, they were just great. And in this, they were both so one-dimensional. They had tunnel vision on what the objective should be. And quite frankly, a lot of the decisions, when you come back and kind of look at it, they were kind of dumb.
Well, the way I picture it is actually almost like way too comedic. It's like, you know, oh, they gave us orders. We're rebels. Let's be rebellious. Like that kind
But that
of
was,
idea.
but that's what they had, the one dimension.
Yes.
Like the rebels in general didn't think anything through.
I was trying to think of a way to bring it in without getting too spoilerific, but I am just going to say there's a lot of authority figures on both sides that just seem like they're not thinking anything through or communicating anything.
Yeah.
I want to say this is the difference between this and the original trilogy. In the original trilogy, you had the rebels desperately trying to stave off a genuine threat because Darth Vader's a genuine threat. In this one, you have two incompetent sides trying to get rid of each other and failing because they both suck.
And they really had in the original stuff, or even in the prequel trilogies, the overarching story felt like a master plan more so than this did.
You know what? I didn't think about it like that previously, but now that you mention it, it does seem like they're kind of almost like the movies are their own isolated, like episodic occurrences rather than one overarching.
That's something I noticed too. That was one of the things I was going to say, is that this felt like a really long episode of the Clone Wars cartoon. And I'm going to go with one step further. Some of the plots they use and some of the story hooks they use were taken from the Clone Wars cartoon. I'm not going to go into what they did.
Yeah.
But there were some things on there that I've seen before.
Well, it's like I watching Rogue One. You know, we know that it was ultimately fit into, like, leading up to some of the storylines.
Yep.
But it really felt like its own story. And when they build it as not part of the trilogy, it felt like its own story. This one is supposed to be part of a trilogy, but it felt like its own story.
Very
like,
disconnected.
Yes, it very much was disconnected. Okay, now, the next part, Josh, you might have to edit it out if I can't do it spoiler-free. But I really want to take a minute to talk about Kylo Ren.
Okay.
In the first episode, I really didn't find him as an intimidating presence. I thought he was a bit of a joke. I mean, it's not his fault, but I didn't think that the actors look fit for the villain. I think that this movie, if it did one thing right, it, going forward, based on the events that took place, made me actually view him as a villain, as a potential threat, and as something that could grow into an intimidating presence.
Yes.
I kind of agree with that, but I think the problem is that we're now going into the final movie, and he's still not really a threat.
There's some talks that there might be 3 more coming.
What?
Yeah.
Okay, you know what? Let's not even go into that.
I mean, this is getting into a whole other thing.
Yeah.
But both Mark Hamill and Ridley, Ray, Daisy Ridley,
Yes, Daisy Ridley.
have said that the next movie is they don't want to have anything to do with Star Wars anymore. Maybe not in those terms, but the idea is that they were saying that they essentially want to be done playing those characters in a way that was
Episode
implying
9.
that the storylines are going to keep going.
Yeah.
Like, oh, there's been talks of contracts for more movies, and the two of them who have vocally expressed displeasure with this movie and the direction of their characters have said, like, well, Ridley said it a little bit more PR-like, I don't want to play this character forever.
I mean, Luke, obviously, he can say whatever he wants.
But he's at, well, and I mean, okay, this is not with the plot of the movie necessarily or anything, but there's a lot of interviews online where he said because of the direction that the director and writer has taken with his character, that he no longer wants to play Luke Skywalker. And that's saying a lot for a guy who has been Luke Skywalker. I mean, okay, he wasn't in like a lot of the movies, but he's been Luke Skywalker for
That's
decades
how
now.
you recognize
And
him,
he's
you know?
essentially saying that what they're doing with my character, I don't want anything to do with it anymore.
Yeah.
You know, I can kind of see that, because the middle part with him was...
Well, the direction that they're going with his character in general just doesn't feel like it fits.
I got a little sidetracked,
Yeah.
but the idea was that based on all of that talk, it does sound like the next movie won't be the end of it.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, fair enough. I will also say that I kind of don't like how this trilogy is ending up being a continuation of the middle trilogy. Because when you think about it, they're literally doing the exact same thing that they did in the middle trilogy. And I don't mean this from episode 7 was a clone of episode 4.
Which it kind of was.
I mean it, they're basically just continuing it on. Whereas when you think about it, the prequel trilogy, for all the bad that there was in it, was a complete story that had different things in it. This is just a continuation of the Empire trying to hunt down and kill the rebels. That's just lazy.
What I don't understand is how they could be considered still rebels after the events of the original trilogy. Anyways, we're going to get way too sidetracked on that.
Yeah.
We're talking about this movie.
Yeah.
Yes. Kylo Ren, I agree. I think he is a much more intimidating figure after the events of this movie.
I also think that they did a better job making Rey a hero in this one. I don't think they're quite there with her either. But I like her a lot more after this one than I did the first one. I'll say that much.
Honestly, I'm neutral on her. I was neutral on her after the last movie. I'm still neutral on her. If it is true and she doesn't want to play the character after one more movie, I think they're going to have to put a lot more of a focus on like Poe and Finn to become the Forerunners. Mm-hmm. And last movie, I would have said absolutely. This movie, it's like they're going to need to do some work on those two if they're going to have to take up the mantle. Yeah. Unless the movie does somehow become more about Kylo Ren. Right? But in general, and I wanted to say it simply because it was a big 180. In the first movie, I was not a fan of Kylo Ren.
Yep.
And in this one, yeah, I'm on board. I think even still saying there, I think the actor's performance was one of the better ones. Yep. It really was. He knocked it out of the park. He knocked it out of the park.
Yeah, he sold me on it.
And that's saying a lot after the first one, where it was kind of deflating and the expectations were elevated. One thing that I've read a lot online about this movie was length and pacing. What did you guys think about?
You know, the first hour and a half, maybe, it felt like it dragged a lot. Mm-hmm. But then it just hit that one point in the battle that was happening, and it felt like the last hour was just amazing to me for pacing terms. Like, there was so much combat in the last stretch of it.
See, for me, the length didn't bother me. Length like that doesn't bother me. It's more that it felt like it had a little bit of a lull, more in the middle. Like, the beginning part kind of like went bang, right? With the battle scene in space. And
they
then,
definitely started off, like, right away off the bat, they get you with the high adrenaline, with a lot going on, fast pace, and I thought, man, we're in for a ride. And then, yes, there's a middle section that really drags.
Yep.
And it's more subplot stuff that, honestly, I think the movie could have done away with. But I went to the bathroom at one point. I can't make it through a 2.5-hour movie. And I looked at my clock, like my time, and there was like an hour left in the movie. And I was like, you know what? They have to get back in gear now. It was almost like this feeling of, oh, well, plot or not, leading up to it, action is going to start now because they're running out of time and they have to finish strong. And then that is what they did.
The final battle sequence that was almost an hour, was well done. You know, I felt excited during that part where there was blasters going everywhere.
I felt so happy with that. I felt so happy with the final lightsaber battle. I really enjoyed that. I know for some people would probably absolutely despise that, but I really liked the way they did that.
I think you're right on. I'm with you on it. I enjoyed it, but it is going to be
a point of contention.
I think at one point when we look back at, like, say, if they do this as a trilogy and then another trilogy, when we look back at, like, the first 9 movies, when this is all said and done, guessing on what happens in the next one, this is going to be one of the ones that's going to be very polarizing, that people are going to look at and either love it or hate it. You know, like, nobody liked Phantom Menace, but everybody loved the Darth Maul battle. Yeah. That will be forever remembered, right?
Yeah.
Same with, Luke and Darth Vader, right? Like, it's going to be remembered. This one, I don't think it's going to have the same lasting impact. It was pretty cool. I personally enjoyed it. I thought it was done very well. But I don't think that it will be received as well.
There's not really very much that's memorable in this. Like, when you think about all the characters, there's really no one who stands out. Like, maybe Kylo Ren stands out the most, but when you compare him to, like, Darth Vader, which unfortunately are massive shoes for him to fill, you think about the threatening presence. Like, even in Rogue One, when the lights go down and you just hear his breath at that final scene, like, you feel it right away.
Yeah.
Kylo Ren, I don't think is ever going to have that unless they do something amazing in the next movie.
I think you hit the nail on the head, though. That is big shoes. Like, I don't know who could follow up Vader.
No.
But if I had to sum it up, this is a step in the right direction.
For sure.
Yeah.
And while he might not live up to Darth Vader, he'd get a lot closer based on what we saw. What am I missing?
Story.
Okay, plot. Plot is one of the toughest ones to do without spoilers.
Yes.
Yeah.
But if you can, in a more generic way, what did you think of the story?
Disjointed.
Okay.
I didn't like it.
It felt like it bounced around. We talked about it a little bit, about how the timeline just didn't match up with certain things. Didn't make a lot of sense. And some of the choices, again, we brought it up just earlier in the review, choices that the Rebels and the Empire made were just kind of dumb. It felt like they were children shooting at each other. It just didn't work.
Yeah.
If there's one thing that I would say about the plot, is that, one, it is padded.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
There is that middle section that almost feels like a bad video game side mission. And if you cut it out entirely, the plot doesn't suffer for it. And it is, because I've been reading a lot about it the last couple days or whatever. Somebody put it into words that really kind of rang true with what I was feeling about it, but I couldn't verbalize. Is that they were, like, the characters were creating problems to solve.
Yeah.
That wouldn't have been there otherwise. And it just, it was dumb.
Yeah.
It was just dumb. I don't know, like, Alex.
It seemed like they didn't know what they wanted to do, because they didn't really get any character development done for almost everyone.
Like, the only one who had even the slightest bit would have been Poe, and it was only a little bit.
Yeah. Like, they had all these characters.
I want to go back to the
things.
Poe thing in a minute.
Like, they had Finn doing things the entire time, but they didn't do anything to build his character. Like, it could have been a random stormtrooper doing his stuff, and it would have had the same feeling. There was no connection to anyone there. And one more thing, hated everything Leia did. everything Leia did. Her character in this was awful from start to finish.
And it's funny too, because thinking about like how she should have evolved over the years into that general role, you'd think she would have learned a couple lessons,
It
right?
was very disappointing. Her character.
One thing I wanted to say real quick about Poe
Yep.
is it felt like a one step forward, two step back situation with me. They did a little development, but then they also made him look so bad with decision making and being one dimensional that it kind of killed some of the character development they had previously. Anyway, I'm going to make a decision here. We're going to final verdicts. Who wants to start?
I'll start.
Sure.
I'm giving it a 7.
Oh, I thought you were going to be... I mean, you're the biggest Star Wars fan. I thought you were going to be higher.
I mean, there were some things that would have made it so much higher. If the entire movie was like the last hour of it, I would have given it a 9. Like, that's how much I enjoyed the last hour. But if the entire movie was like the first, the first like half hour was pretty good. If the entire movie was like that middle hour, though, this would have been a 5.
But you're talking about like 60% of the movie was enjoyable. You can't get a good score if 40%, an hour of a 2.5 hour movie, is dragging and boring. I mean, I'm assuming that's what you're saying, right?
Yeah, basically. Like, there were some parts I really loved about it, but the plot was just not good, and what they did with character developments just ruined it. Like, it wasn't the caliber I expect from a Star Wars movie at all.
I'm giving it a 5. I mean, very mediocre. The thing that I can't forgive is the direction they went with the story. There were so many missteps, so many loose ends, so many things that didn't make sense. And the characters making bad choices that I wouldn't have thought they would make with very little development. It felt like the movie was pointless.
I had this number in my head pretty much in the theater. 6 out of 10. There was so many times in the theater that I was shaking my head. It just stupid decisions. It's kind of like when I look back at like the old Resident Evil, like the 3rd movie. And also like what Alex said, these people have been surviving for this long and they're still making decisions this stupid and this one dimensional that, yeah, there was enjoyable things. Some of the action, some of the like actual like high-paced, adrenaline-filled moments were really entertaining.
Yeah.
But they were all counteracted with some very slow, slogging middle points. What's up?
There's also one more thing I just want to say about the plot in general.
Okay, all right.
Is that in the previous movies, like pretty much all of them, you felt such a genuine threat to the galaxy as a whole. Because of the way this one was like episodically focused in on one thing, it didn't feel like there was any threat from the First Order. And it also didn't feel like the Resistance had any chance of being a beacon of hope for the rest of the galaxy. It felt so isolated, and both sides felt so pathetic that it made me feel like if the rest of the galaxy really depends on these or fears these people, maybe the galaxy deserves to be destroyed.
Well, I mean, if the villains are as bad as the heroes, the galaxy might be all right.
Yeah.
These two might cancel each other out. Anyway, that's our review for The Last Jedi. As always, feel free to leave a comment since no one ever does, and let us know what you thought of the movie. Until next time, live in the real world, play in a Pixel one. Hey, did you like that video? If you did, be sure to let us know by clicking the like button and leaving a comment. If you want to be first in line for any new content, be sure to subscribe to our channel and then hit up our Facebook page. The link's in the description below to see what's coming up next.